Okay, so we've got a few minutes, running tight to time, but we have got an opportunity for questions now. So if there are any questions to any of the members of the panel, we'll take them now. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, one at the back there.
Barry Dunn from Semantico. A question for Tom, if I may. You mentioned that mobile web users were more willing to pay than desktop users. I wondered if you'd done any research into the reasons behind that. Could it be that the payment system is easier on one versus the other, or are there different communities?
I think it's what Charlie said earlier. I think it's frictionless. I think it's so much easier to spend on through iOS in particular than it is through desktop, that people see that less of a barrier and adopt it more easily.
One question at the back there. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the freemium apps versus the paid apps. Obviously, you've got a very high volume of people seeing the freemium ones, and does that incur a massive marketing cost, and does that come into account of it still being worthwhile doing it, including the marketing cost of getting that many people? Probably not a big problem for the BBC.
No, you wouldn't. It is, honestly. It makes no difference. We don't market a freemium app any more than we do a premium app. The only difference is once it's out there, there's not a lot we can do to change the offer in terms of when we have a premium app, we can do sales, we can make it free for a day. There are things beyond that we can do, but the benefits of going freemium far outweigh it.
To add to that, actually, just to add a point about that, which is that one of the first apps I was involved with, we had a bit of a tussle with the developers about the precise launch date, and essentially it has gone live in the App Store before we as the marketing department had our campaigns in place, due to a misunderstanding, and it went to number 1 in the chart, the subject chart, before we had got any marketing out the door. So I think just the App Store by itself is a massive environment for bringing in a huge amount of kind of latent interest. That was a couple or 3 years ago when the App Store was a lot emptier. I don't think you could pull that off now necessarily, but we still see that with minimal or no marketing, apps just gain a huge amount of visibility in the App Store that helps them fly off the virtual shelf.
Question over there.
David Thompson, Reuters. The question I have is, there's so many new apps being created all the time. Do you have any kind of a feeling or research about what is the lifespan of an app? In other words, you put an app out, what kind of an expectation do you have before you either have to change it, revise it, or replace it? Because it's just changing all the time.
It totally depends on the model that you're going with. And some apps come and go, and depends on the theming of the app. The idea of a freemium app is that you're constantly updating it. You're always adding new content, so it's keeping it fresh and it's keeping it charting. Charting is one of the most important things that you can do in terms of marketing. So you've got to find new ways of pushing it up the chart so it becomes more visible. Constantly refreshing content and meeting that user expectation about that. That's very important. But some apps, I would say, like the ones that I showed earlier from Top Gear, they do have a lifespan. We actually launch them and think actually this will peak high and go low, and in that period we'll make some money. We do that very much with our good food recipe apps. So we do thematic things. So when it comes to Christmas or whatever, we just think, right, and we're going to make our money in 2 weeks. So it totally depends on your approach. I do think for you guys, discovery is really difficult, and it's going to get more difficult. One of the things that we're seeing now is don't just launch your one app into a vacuum. Try and partner with other apps so you can cross-promote each other. It's most likely that there's going to be some thread of usage between all of those users, and you should band together, because in the app space, you've just got one footprint with one app. If you spread it across 5, at least you've got more chance of visibility.
Question down here at the front.
Hi, Adam White from JBJS. A question for Charlie, actually, using some of Tom's points. If we consider that a plastic model of a Dalek isn't saleable without Doctor Who being on telly at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, can we say that the breakdown of the article is possible without the article being present? Do you envisage a world where there is no peer-reviewed article in long form in a journal or on a website?
Gee, thanks for that. Just trying.
Sorry.
I'm not going to say categorically whether I envisage a world with or without. Personally, I don't think we will see the end of long-form peer-reviewed articles. I think they will always have a place, just as I think the PDF will continue to have a place, if only to be sucked into Mendeley. But I think, yes, you can. I sort of see it almost as a kind of pyramid. I think if you get the right snippet at the top of the pyramid, then it draws the user in, and ultimately they are going to want to get to something long form. If the content is right, if it's interesting enough, they're going to keep drilling down to get a bit more and a bit more until ultimately they're reading a whole article and shoving it in their reference manager or whatever. But I think it is possible for the right bit to be taken out of context and still have a value in and of itself. But as I said earlier, I think that the key to that is a real shift in our focus of what we're trying to do with content, right down to changing the way we structure it and tag it and add metadata to it, so that the way that information can be processed and integrated is possible, because obviously with the way things are at the moment, it kind of isn't.
I don't know, Matt, if you've got an insight into that, into the way that articles are used on your platform, because obviously you've got apps and content there, whether you've got any insights into the variation.
Nothing in particular. Really just the usage of the articles as they are, as we bring them. I think what we saw with the trends is that there's a little less PDF usage, and we're seeing more engagement with the HTML form, which is a little contradictory to what we've seen sometimes on the traditional classic site.
Yeah.
So having a lot of that more enriched data and having all the interlinking and referencing and extra information, I think is beneficial in mobile.
Yeah. I have time for one more question. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, could I just get the microphone? Sorry. Thank you.
Hello, Jill Taylor-Rowe, University Librarian at Newcastle. Fascinating session. If I can, a question primarily, I think, for Charlie. Very interested with this idea of the sort of the unit of transaction being at the end user point of view. But as someone who manages a large university budget, and the current model is selling large amounts of content through us, but we're not the end user, I'm just interested in the dynamics of this. Do you see the expenditure at our level diminishing and being replaced by this direct sale to the end user? Because this almost implies quite a seismic shift in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think if I was really put on the spot and asked where we were going to be in 2030, I don't know how long it will take, but some years' time, I think probably we are going to end up in an environment where the user has much more control and is responsible for their own budget, and whether that has any relationship to the current budgets and the way they're being used and allocated and set, or whether actually those go away in and of themselves and the two things kind of change separately, not without some relationship between those two things happening, but I could see that users will just slowly start to buy stuff by themselves, even while they're still being bought stuff by the institution, and then over time the institution will start to do other things with its budget, again perhaps driven more by services than content, and helping users navigate the information environment rather than explicitly just providing the information to them. That's sort of, I see us heading much more towards this kind of microtransaction economy, but that's not based on any modelling, that's just a kind of instinct.
Thank you. That's all we've got time for, unfortunately. I'd like just to draw us back, and I think that, as you said at the beginning, there are a lot of issues to think about. Yeah, not least, will the article exist? How are we going to fund this, and so forth? But I think that the point that was made in all three talks, but particularly by Charlie and Tom at the end there, was about this focus, the fact that we're not necessarily talking about megabuck investment, but we are trying to think about the amount of headspace that you have to give to the things that you're doing. And I think it was earlier on today when Rob Verker-Yates was talking from Semantica, just talking about focusing on the one thing and actually making sure that you do it right. I think that's a really powerful message for some of the smaller organizations as well. So perhaps let's take that away too. So to end, I'd just like to say thank you to our three speakers once again. Audrey's going to have a word in just a minute and tell us where we need to go to get our beers and wines, so please stay around for that. But before we do, can we just say thank you to our speakers once again. Thank you.